Welcome to Grief Sucks Life After Loss, where we talk all things grief. Thanks for being with us today, and we hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome, Lindsay. Thanks for being here with us today. How are you?
Great. How are you? Thanks so much for having me, Linda.
Good. So, you have some stories to tell.
I have some stories, and we wanted just before we hit record, we talked about marriage, walking away from a marriage, and this is something that I know a lot of people. I feel like I'm meeting more and more people who are leaving their marriages and not out of something like massively bad happening, but just feeling like that chapter has ended and they need to walk into something else. And that was very much the case for me and my ex-husband. And we had been married 12 years together, 14 years, 2 kids, and things were not working. Things were not terrible. He's a very good man. We parented well together. We got along well together. He was one of my best friends. The longer we were together, the more we both felt suffocated by each other. It was like we were growing together for the first half of our marriage, and then something shifted and we started growing in two different directions. He wanted different things. I wanted my life to go a certain way. I didn't fully have that nailed down, but it just felt like we were stuck. We were stuck in a cycle where, it was, my reaction to when I'm overwhelmed is to control and get more controlling and, pick on him and criticize him. His reaction was to just duck out and check out. And so I think even before our marriage officially ended, he had checked out, and in some ways I had checked out. Like, we had gone to counseling for years. I feel like we really did give our best effort, both of us, but we were just stuck in this cycle that we couldn't break. And it was extremely painful recognizing the cycle that you're in, but and both wanting to break it and both wanting things to work out. Like, divorce was never on our radar, but it was, we couldn't figure it out. And there came a point where we just had to surrender to that. And I'll say walk in the failure of our marriage, because no matter how hard we seemed to try, it just wasn't working. And then all of the criticisms comes up, right? Like, in terms of being a failure, not having a successful marriage, but also like, what are you doing to the kids? Like, we're parting ways. Like, it was an amicable, mutual breakup, but like, I'm walking away from a good man. Like, there is nothing, like, there's no abuse. There's no, like, nothing earth shattering here, but it was just like, we couldn't figure it out. And then, with the kids, we actually made a decision at one point. Like, we're going to stay together because, we have 2 young kids, and for financial reasons, like, I was a stay-at-home mom. For financial reasons, like, it just made sense to stay together. But one of I'll say the nail in the coffin question for us really became, or it was, would we want this marriage? Would we want this relationship for either of our kids? And we both sat there and we said no. Like, as much as we were trying to model and do good by our kids, like, we were not modeling what a good relationship was and what we wanted for our kids. And then it became about, how can we create a relationship between us that is different than what we had planned? How can we create a relationship that we would be proud for our kids to model? And so we set down that path. We stayed under the same roof for another 6 months. And then I moved out. At the same time, I started traveling, and I went on a 5-month trip. Some of that, the first part was with my kids, and then the last 2 months were without my kids. And it was just, we talk about grief. It's like grieving the loss of a marriage, but it's grieving the loss of my identity as a stay-at-home mom, and of, all the shifts that take place when we start to pull out of our roles that we've been in for so long. So maybe I'll stop there. Yeah, maybe I'll stop there for a moment.
Okay. And I mean, I give it to you guys for coming together and making those decisions, because I think a lot of people, we live in a different world today. And, it's not like back in the day when our parents or grandparents, or they toughed it out. Whether the relationship was good or bad, they just stuck with it. And a lot of people do it for the kids, or think they're doing it for the kids, but it's not necessarily a good situation for the kids, especially if they're seeing their parents not happy. Then, like you said, like, what would you want your kids to do in the situation, or how would you want their marriage or relationship to be? And they learn by seeing how we react to things and how we do things. And I think that's very important to think about that aspect of it, instead of just saying, we're saying for the kids because it's better for them, because 9 times out of 10 it's not.
No, and it was for the kids. There was walking away for me from, like, there was the security of a house, the security of a husband to take care of me, and then parenting separately. Because at that point, I was a stay-at-home mom. He was working so much that he had kind of checked out of parenting. So then it was even just walking through, like, passing over control to him, because the way we did our co-parenting situation for those first 5 months, as I was traveling and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, I had the kids by myself for the first 2 months. We went to Costa Rica to see if that would be a good place for me to live. I knew I didn't want to live in Canada anymore. And then we actually spent a month together in Mexico, all 4 of us, for Christmas. And then he took the kids back to Canada, and I went off to Bali for 2 months. And I was also homeschooling the kids up until that point. And so the kids had to go back into the public school system, and I had to surrender full control of parenting to their dad, while I was literally on the other side of the world for 2 months.
And that's scary in itself. That's just a whole, because you're used to being the one to care for your kids, based pretty much 100% on the hands-on aspect. So just letting that change alone, I'm sure, brought a lot of fear and anxiety and just a lot of emotions.
It was a lot of emotions. It was a lot of self-criticism too. Like, what kind of mother leaves her kids? What kind of mother, like, leaves her kids to essentially go on vacation? Like, that's how it looked from the outside. And I really, I went to Bali. It was just based on intuition. It was like, what my intuition was telling me was, go to Bali, meet people to help you figure out your life. I'm like, I don't even know where to start with that. I don't know why I have to go so far away. And I fought it and fought it and fought it. And then I was just like, okay, I'm buying the plane ticket and I'm booking my first 4 nights. And I just really just felt into each day. But at the same time, I was like, what are my kids going to be like without me? We have literally spent like every waking hour together for years. And then what would he be like as a parent without me? And then on top of that, those kids are going back into the public school system. They had been in it previously, and it was not a good situation for them. So there was a lot of self-judgment. There was a lot of guilt. I didn't quite recognize it as guilt at that point, just for essentially walking away from kids. Like, I was used to having them around. I was used to being in control of their education and what they ate and who their friends were. They were 6 and 8 at the time. Just to surrender that completely and trust that they would be okay through all of it. And I was not screwing them up by doing this. And somehow it was trusting and having faith that whatever journey I was on was also going to benefit them somehow, even though I couldn't see it in the moment.
I think as parents, we always worry about our decisions screwing our kids up. And mine, when after my husband died, I'm like, is any decision that I'm making screwing up my kids, or am I teaching them how to handle this the wrong way? Or, I think that's always in the back of our mind is whatever we're doing, is that going to affect them long term or make them resent us or anything, to that nature? It's a scary, scary situation. But also, I think when we're going through things, when you're trying to find yourself, because once you walk away from a situation like that, now you have to figure out how you're going to make money, and you have to figure out where you're going to live, and you got to figure out how you're going to do XYZ alone, on top of figuring out who you are, because you're a different person without that person. You're a different person being a co-parent, and in all the different situations, it just makes you a different person and whole. And I think sometimes we go on this journey to figure out who we are and to heal ourselves, to be able to get through that, to find out who we truly are.
Yeah, and I never really fully understood the importance of taking the time to heal. And, we always hear about like self-care, take care of yourself, put your oxygen mask on first. But it's only really been in the last couple of years where I've fully understood that. And as I've taken these months without my kids, I did 2 months initially. And then later that year, I did another 2 months in preparation for a 6-month trip to Bali with my kids. But taking that time, laying the foundation, to me, I see how much happier I am as a person. I see how much better of a mom I am. I see how much more patience I have for my kids when I do take time to like slow down. It's not even necessarily pampering myself, but just slow down and have the space to reflect and cry and process stuff. And I have a very good relationship because of that with my kids. And it's not that I had a bad relationship before, but I see the sort of ripple effect, even like doing Bali for 6 months with my kid, like single parenting in a country, no support, completely different culture. There was nowhere for me to get away. There wasn't grandparents to lean on. I wasn't necessarily comfortable hiring a nanny. I did a little bit, but not for like nighttime stuff or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. So my kids saw me, and at the same time, I was going through a very intensive 12-week healing course, which was just like the wildest journey I've ever been on. And a lot of stuff was coming to the surface, a lot of my fears, a lot of my feelings of self-worth, like everything was just being thrown at me in those first 3 months that we were in Bali. And I could not escape my kids. And they saw me in like puddles on the floor. They saw me angry and going through, when my anger finally started releasing. And even though I did my best not to take it out on them, I remember one time just sitting there and just screaming, and I wasn't even screaming at them. I just sort of like really, really loud, scared the crap out of both of them. Both of them started crying. And they just got to see me in like some of my worst moments. And also because of the healing stuff I had already done, because of the course I was going through, I could also sit there and help them really understand like none of this was to do with them. Even when I was taking it out on them, I was still able. I forget what they did to my room the one time. I think they hung a bunch of stuff up, or I don't remember if they pulled out my clothes or if it was just paper. Like there was something where there was just a mess in my bedroom. And I walked in and I just started crying, and they were just like, and I remember just sitting there or standing there crying and feeling upset and feeling agitated and just being like, this actually has nothing to do with you guys. This is triggering something that happened like a decade ago. And I could see that relationship. And I'm like, what you guys just did is triggering this, but it has nothing to do with me. And I was able to sit in this space of being completely in that overwhelm emotional state, and also the observer state where I'm just like, okay, I see what's happening. I see my reaction, and I'm like walking through. I'm like, I need to just go cry in the other room
Mhm.
and I will be back. And so they got to witness all of that. And for my daughter in particular, she's always been one to hold in her emotions just to try to tough it out. There's so many, like, she's so similar to how I was as a little girl, of just, wanting to put on the happy face or feeling the need to put on the happy face. I don't know if it's a conditioned state or a natural state, but, and then understanding, I was a parenting coach for a number of years, and understanding, like, emotions need to be felt, they need to be expressed. And if they're bottled up, then it comes out as rage, it comes out as anger, it comes out as resentment, it comes out in these other ways. And she's always been one to just like smile, 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 and then just like explode for a few weeks, where it's like, I mean, when she was younger, she's 10 now, but she's more in this last year, I'm seeing her crying more. And I'm just like, this is so good. This is so good that you're letting it out, and not getting angry about the tears coming out, or not like fighting super hard. So I think when we are able to process emotions in front of our kids
Mhm.
without, I mean, some days I'm sure they thought it was about them, and some days I probably did blame them. But when they're able to see all of the messy sides of being what it is to be human, right? All of these things are part of it, and we're modeling for them how to process emotions, whether we like it or not. We're leading by example, and it's been really, it's been very messy, but it's been really beautiful to, especially with my daughter, witness her being more and more okay with just allowing the tears to come. And I really do think that's because I've been better at that. Like, that's something that I really resisted for the first few decades of my life.
I think it's important for our kids to see us process the emotions and go through the things and how we deal with those things. Because at the end of the day, we're teaching them that we are real. It does get messy, and it's okay. For me, a big thing was to teach my kids it's okay to be down, but we can't stay there. We have to get back up. So it's okay to have our bad days. It's okay to have those days where, you just don't feel like doing anything, but you can't stay there. You got to get back up at some point. Um, and I
Yeah, and
think
just
it's important to teach our kids those things.
yeah, and just the more we can recognize, even in ourselves, that it's just a wave of emotions that's passing over us, and it will subside, whether it's, within an hour, a day, a few weeks. I don't know, but there's always another, like, there's always an end or like a break in the emotions, and we just have to ride the wave. It will not consume us forever unless we are really determined to let it.
Absolutely. So you went to Bali, and did you find the people to help you? And how did you find those people? I'm so curious.
Yeah, this is where like the faith and the trust really comes in, because yeah, I went to Bali. I didn't know anyone there until maybe 3 weeks before I left for that trip, when I was randomly connected with somebody there. Honestly, it's like the funniest thing. It was just like a Facebook message from someone I've never met in person. Hey, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. What's new in your life? And just sharing an update. Hey, I'm going to Bali. This is what, like, just went through a divorce, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, there's someone I follow in line in Bali, and she's just going through a separation too. Like, do you want me to connect you with her? And I was like, sure. And
Yeah,
that person is now one of my best friends.
that's awesome.
So I met her. Like, I actually met up. Exchanged a few messages before I went, and when I got there, within the first 2 days, I met her in person, and then she just started introducing me to people, and then it just sort of like went from there. And like I said, I had the first 4 days booked, nothing else planned. And Bali is a very magical spiritual place where your intuition, like you can just tap into it. It's so strong. There's something about the energy of that island that's pretty incredible. And I just, after those first 4 days, I was like, I'm gonna go stay in a hostel. And I was like, I'm 40 years old. Like, what? I don't have any desire to stay in a hostel. Like, what is happening? So I booked a few nights in there. It was a women's only hostel. And I met two ladies in that hostel, and they became my travel buddies over the following 2 months. And we would go our separate ways and we would reconnect. And so that was really cool. And then I was introduced to a whole expat community there. So I got to pick their brains about what it was like to live in Bali and to move out of Canada, the US, Australia, wherever they were all from. And they had been there for an extended period of time. So they were well established in that area. So they gave me all sorts of pointers, introduced me to other people. One of them I ended up doing some like a business with, and someone else who I was introduced to for healing purposes. Like he does channeling and like more spiritual coaching. And he's actually the one that I ended up doing that 12-week intensive program with. I started just going to his weekly sessions. He had group sessions of like $20 or less than $20, and go sit, ask questions, have some guidance. And there was something really, really magical about that presence as well, and very healing. Like you could just sit in that energy, and no matter what questions were asked, it was just like you were surrounded by love and just like this gentle guidance. And I ended up helping him put a book together. So I did some work with him. So I picked up some, I'll say jobs along the way. But also just, when I left Bali, the only clarity I had was that I was not going to have a home. So I left Bali in mid-March. The clarity I had was I'm not going to have a home until at least September. I didn't have any further clarity on that. And I didn't have any, I'll say, sort of career path or sustainable work. Like I had very project-based work. So I was walking into more unknown. So I came back and I stayed with my parents. But what those travels did was really, they allowed me to trust my intuition. Like I went there based on intuition. Even Costa Rica was intuition. There was things, I was being shown evidence basically to trust my intuition, and that I wasn't alone, that I was being guided. And I just had to walk forward one step at a time without having the whole plan figured out, which was so uncomfortable for me because I've always been a planner. I've always had, the longer term vision. I've always needed to like have it all mapped out. And now it's still uncomfortable. It's still uncomfortable. Living in the present is very uncomfortable, but I do have this faith that things are working out for me and that I am being taken care of. And even though, I often say I feel like I have a really strong compass, I just have no idea where I'm going.
I feel that. I want to be on the go. I don't have, I feel like I'm still trying to figure out life at 42, I guess. I often tell people, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up.
I think we all are, right? I'm the same age as you, and I'm just like, what am I doing? I'm sure, I was going to say, I'm sure people are looking at this like a midlife crisis, but I'm like, I feel like my life is more put together now than when I had all of the boxes checked of like the marriage, the successful career, all of the things, the house. But yeah, just piecing it together one step at a time. And it's a little bit more
freeing to be able to be on your own terms and piece it together. Because I feel like you don't feel as bogged down as you did with that constant schedule and, the corporate jobs and things like that.
Yeah, I get to choose what I do. There's a level of discomfort that comes with that too.
Absolutely.
Even just talking to my ex-husband a few months ago, and it was before the summer, and I'm like, I want to take my kids here this summer, and he's like, I want to take them to Mexico at Christmas, and then I'm like, I'd love to go back to Bali for 6 months, and it was just like this 5-minute conversation of like all these things, and I'm like, what is happening? But even like the fact that he's been so open for me, like taking the kids and traveling and exposing them to different cultures and different ways of doing life, it's been unnerving. Like sometimes I'm just like, someone put some boundaries on me, because it's so I know I didn't say that out loud, just like cancel that. But it's so open-ended and it's freeing, but it's also like, oh my goodness, I could literally do anything and go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my goodness.
And it sucks that sometimes it takes events or, losses to get to that point.
Yeah, and there's a story that I love that basically like illustrates that point. Like sometimes we just need we need the big thing to happen to shake us. And the story's just like two old men sitting on a porch and there's a dog whimpering. And the one man turns to the other and is like, why is your dog whimpering? He's lying on a nail. Well, why doesn't he move? Doesn't hurt that much. And like we often, the little things in our life that are just like annoying, we can put up with them, we can brush them off, we can ignore them. It's not that high and urgent. And then when it is high, like sometimes we need that, that diagnosis, that major life event, that big thing to just shake us awake, to rattle us out of that comfort zone when, maybe we had been getting cues all along that this was the path we should take and we've just been ignoring it. Or maybe it's just, from a faith perspective, I really feel like we're not like everything we're handed is for the purpose of our healing and our growth. And it sucks going through some of those experiences, but they're serving us from on a soul level, not necessarily always at a human level in the moment, but there's a bigger purpose. And there's nothing put in front of you that you can't handle, that you're not ready to deal with, even when it's excruciating. Like it is really there to grow you and expand you.
I agree with that. It's all very scary to make the decisions to jump in to do it, but I think at the end it really does pay off if you pay attention and take the leap.
Yeah, I've never felt more myself. I've never loved life more. And I've never felt deeply happy as I do now. And even like that happiness from like I am worth, like from a self-worth perspective, like I am actually worthy of living a really incredible life, and life gets to be fun when we can move through our stuff, we can move through our shadows and our grief and our experiences and really just like shed the layers and the beliefs that have been holding us back for so long.
Yes. So are you in Bali now or Canada?
I am in Canada for now and hoping to go back to Bali in January for 6 months with my kids again.
And how does the kids feel now about everything that's happened?
Like in terms of the marriage, in terms of Bali, in terms of like, what do you, which parts?
I would say in general, like how did they handle all of that?
I mean, way better than I thought. Truthfully, way better than I thought. They have been incredible travelers for the adventure. I can see, like when we first got to Bali with them 6 months, like the biggest thing with that arrangement was like they're not going to see their dad.
Mm-hmm.
That's massive. And he did come to visit partway through. That's the biggest thing that we had to contend with. And same with like when I was traveling without them, it's, they're not seeing me every day. And we really make a point to video chat every day. So when we were in Bali at breakfast, they were chatting with their dad before school and really consciously trying to like maintaining that connection, because like I have zero desire to take my kids away from their dad.
Right.
But that's been the biggest one. But in terms of like adapting to the ending of our marriage and me moving out, I think it's been way better than we expected. I think because of the way we did it, where we just jumped into traveling and it was an adventure, and then I just never went back. There was definitely times where like, and we told them, we very clearly laid out like what would be happening over the next few months. And even now we're always just discussing like, this is the plan for the next few months, because we don't have a permanent, I mean, it's me. I don't have a permanent, it's not their dad. I don't have a permanent home. I don't have a permanent solution here. So it's just keeping them up to date in terms of what to expect. And then in terms of adapting to like the culture and their new like the Bali stuff, that went smoother than expected. And it was funny because at the beginning of that trip with them, it was within a few weeks very apparent why I had spent 2 months there in the fall without them, just sort of laying the groundwork. And that was a trip I fought. I didn't want to leave my kids again.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to go. And again, the intuition was telling me like, go figure out where you're going to live, figure out like schools, learn how to drive a motorbike. And I was like, I can do all of that with the kids in tow. But when I got there with the kids in tow and I had all that set up, like the ease of the transition, like we didn't have to jump from hotel to
Mm-hmm.
hotel. We didn't have to go, like it made it easier. And again, that was just more evidence that like when I trust my intuition, even with it kind of defies logic and I'm having like a temper tantrum, I'm like, I don't want to go. I don't want to do that thing. But it's just that sort of thing just like deepens my faith, and seeing how well my kids adjusted because I did those things. Yeah, I think it's just like over and over, just lessons to trust yourself.
And you have a podcast. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, my podcast is called Breaking Free with Lindsay. And it's all about shedding fears, limiting beliefs, thought patterns, and really trusting your intuition to create your dream life. So it's basically like all the stuff we just talked about.
Well, it sounds like even though you went through a lot of rough things, that now it's all paid off and you're living truly your best life.
I'm living and still figuring things out along the way. So yeah.
I think that's just how life is going to be. I don't think it's a midlife crisis. I think that's just where we're at in life. And, as long as you're okay, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with figuring out every day.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
We don't have to live those traditional lives anymore. It's okay to be wanderers, and it's fine.
It is fine. And that's like one of the biggest like things that scare people is just not having that plan, not having that guarantee. But it really is an exercise of faith. And that's not necessarily a religion, but it's just like this deep faith in yourself and knowing that whatever happens, you can figure it out from there. Like you are absolutely capable of figuring it out, and you're absolutely capable and worthy of living life in your most authentic and like soul fulfilled way.
Yes. And is there anything else you'd like to share with us today?
No, I feel like I got it all out. Thank you.
It was great. I'm kind of jealous. Bali is definitely on my list.
Yeah, come visit.
I'll let you know when I make that trip. Well, thank you for being with us today and sharing your story. And so I'll reach out when it's my turn to go to Bali.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed this.
Thank you. We hope you enjoyed our conversation today. If you would like to join us on Facebook, you can find us at Grief Sucks, Life After Loss. And if you would like to share your story with us, you can email us at griefsuckslifeafterloss@gmail.com.